My advice is buy a whole chicken, roast it, serve it to your family, use the bones to make a stock, and keep using, reusing until you can stretch 1 or 2 or 3 meals with the same ingredient. That's what we grew up with, and that's what the Spanish traditional gastronomy is all about.
We love celebrating milestones at Dirty Linen Podcast, and in fact, we have our own milestone, a crazy, unbelievable 500 episodes coming up very soon. But today is not about us, it's about Ruben Lopez Mesa and the 5th birthday of Eat Spanish, a culinary organisation that he co-founded to celebrate Spanish food and to foster collaboration among Spanish chefs in Australia. He's based in the very foodie town of Orange in New South Wales. Ruben, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Thank you, Dani. Thank you for having me.
Tell us about Eat Spanish.
Oh, there's a lot to talk about in Spanish. Would you like to start from the beginning, from where the origins of the association were?
I reckon the beginning is a great place to start. Okay,
so a lot of people ask me why. For me, that's the most important thing, Why did we start this? And basically, it was because of personal frustration of not seeing proper real information about the Spanish food. But the second one is about a social necessity that both of our communities, the Australian and the Spanish, we have, basically.
So, tell us a bit about your history in Australia. Like, when did you come here and what sort of, environment did you find here for Spanish food?
So that's it. That's the main thing. I came in 2009, okay? And when I came in 2009, I straight away started working in restaurants. I went to TAFE. I'm an Australian chef. And every single piece of information at the school, at work, I couldn't find anything that it was proper Spanish gastronomy. And it was very, 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 very frustrating. So once that I finished, once I started working professionally in restaurants, had restaurants and stuff like that, I knew it was the moment to start doing something.
And so what is the aim of Eat Spanish? What do you want to change?
A lot of things. So first, when I did my own analyze, when I analyzed the whole thing about why people in Australia didn't know about the Spanish cuisine, I realized that there was a lack of real information. There was a really poor communication between main players, between chefs, institutions, and importers. And the most important one, it was a big absence of produce on our Australian supermarkets. So basically, those are the goals. So obviously, the main goal, the umbrella, is to promote the Spanish gastronomy and culture. But we want to change, the perception that people have about our cuisine. And we would like to see Aussie families cooking Spanish once per week.
Wow, that is such a big ambition. Sell it to me, Ruben. So, I don't know much about Spanish food. I love Italian. I think French food is supreme. Maybe I really believe in Chinese regional cuisine and I want to find out more about that. But how do you get Spanish into my life? Why should I be curious about it?
Okay, so first things first, get in contact with us. we will help you with that. But mainly, honestly, there's a big wave of Spanish cuisine around the world right now. In the last decade, and this is something, there are consequences of migrant movements, okay? Obviously, there was a first one here in Australia in the 60s, 70s, and now we have one consequence of the economic crisis in 2009, okay? So, answering to your question, Jose Andres in US is doing a big movement of Spanish food. There are chefs in UK doing an amazing job as well. And we are here with the biggest networking right now of Spanish food in Australia. The consequence of that, going to the supermarket, Dani, right now, 10 years, almost 13 years after this, we are able to push for produce. So you can find right now jamon, you can find good rice, you can find really good olive oil. And I reckon we should start with traditional gastronomy, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so great. And what do you think people really need to know about Spanish food?
First of all, the produce. When I'm doing cooking classes here in Orange, and every time that I talk about jamon, people is like, but jamon is like prosciutto, right? It's like, yeah. But let's talk about a different type of breed of pig. Let's talk about how do they feed those pigs. Let's talk about how do they cure the pig. So then we can understand that produce that is in front of you is quite unique. So for me, if you ask me that, I would talk about DOPs. Do you know what a DOP is, Dani?
Yeah, like the origin control, like the food that comes from a particular place and is designated as such.
Yeah, that's right. And that is, so basically the European Union gives you that, okay? That is telling you that that product is really good and it's unique, you know? So there's no dodgy practices around it. So I would personally try to convince everyone around me, my family, my friend, and anyone who can listen this to follow what a DOP is and all those Spanish produce that they are unique.
So I suppose you're really stressing the special nature of some of these Spanish ingredients that, you know, are made in a certain way from a certain place and really hold that tradition within them. So if you want Australian families to cook Spanish once a week, what kind of dishes do you want to see cooked more in Australian homes?
So I like to answer to that saying that I'm going to base my own experience, okay? I grew up in a really humble family. My family passed through a civil war and 30 years of really, really, really starving times, okay? So I grew up with something that we call cocina de aprovechamiento. That is something called, in English, it will be translated as the zero waste food. Basically, it's really humble food, okay? So if you ask me for it, well, I don't know, it's up to you. I will go, for example, with the hero of Spanish cuisine, which is a Spanish omelette, okay? But if you like meat, well, try to put a little bit of chorizo on a lentil stew. If you like fish, try to get salted cod or tins. Do you know, Dani, how scared people are about the Spanish tins? It's incredible.
Tell me.
So there is something that always is quite polarizing on my menus, which is the word anchovy. You can find people that they either love it to the death or they hate it to the death. I don't understand why. And people should understand that the tins in Spain, they're coming from the north. The quality is incredible. And the way of preserving, some of them is quite unique. For example, an escabeche is one of those methods of cooking that people don't know about it. And it's incredible. It's delicious. Have you ever tried mussels in escabeche?
Escabeche?
Yeah, the mussels in escabeche.
Ah, yes, I have tried mussels escabeche. But for people who don't know escabeche as a method, just explain it to people.
So basically, we are talking about the importance of vinegars in Spain. Super important. You can even age in vinegar as well, okay? So this technique is coming from the northwest of Spain, from Galicia. And basically what you do is just preserve fish and seafood through acid and a little bit of olive oil, okay? Then you put some spices, paprika, etc.
So good.
You just steam it, and honestly, there's a new trend in Spain of bars without a kitchen. They are just wine and tins. And you should see how amazing those businesses are.
That's really interesting. You know, I wrote a story last week about tinned fish date night and the surge in people who are enjoying quality tinned seafood in Australia. And it's a trend that started in the US, but of course in Spain and in Portugal, and people have been doing it forever, preserving this beautiful seafood and enjoying it. I guess really prizing it for what it is. I think in Australia we've tended to have a bit more of a sense of food that comes in a can as lesser than food that's fresh, but there's a whole other perspective that you can put over it, isn't there?
And that's it. I think that is part of what we all should be doing, you know, which is talking about the quality of it. So please, my first message is don't be scared of it. And secondly is, let's embrace it. You were talking about the meaning of Spanish gastronomy. Not many people know that in Spain we have 17 regions. That is, they are like states, like here in Australia, okay?
Yeah.
And we are very different. So I can tell you right now, if there was a table of 5 people, Spanish, one of them from each different region, I can tell you they are all completely different. We got a DNA in common on how to start a recipe, but profoundly, they are quite different. That's usually people don't know that.
One thing I really love about what you're saying is this idea of sneaking in a little bit of a Spanish element to dishes, whether it's the chorizo in the omelette or in a lentil stew. And it makes me think, I've just written about a sushi restaurant here in Melbourne called Sushi On, and Chef Yong was really inspired by escabeche. And he's eaten some seafood escabeche dishes in Melbourne and loves that sort of Spanish approach to seafood. So when he's doing a piece of sushi, I think it was the King George whiting, he puts a little bit of pickled kombu on it, but in his mind, it's this connection to escabeche. So I think, it's such an interesting, Australia is so multicultural. I love this idea of Spanish influence coming in all different ways.
Absolutely. Actually, our current president, Ana Cortez, she used to work in one of the finest Chinese in Melbourne. And I remember that it was strictly Chinese and Cantonese, but she always has a little bit of jamon ibérico, either in a sauce or in a marination or something. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, well, I think Anna was on my brother podcast, Deep in the Weeds, and I saw her when she was at Lee Ho Fook, and yeah, what an amazing powerhouse of a chef, so talented. And I did find it so interesting that she had, all this Spanish heritage, but a great facility for cooking all kinds of different foods. It's really, that's really to me a very beautiful Australian story.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And on top of that, I would like to add that you can cook Spanish with Australian produce. I live in a regional area. I love supporting all the farmers around me. And I can tell you that with just one or two staples on your pantry, you can cook Spanish food, especially the traditional one. All the stews, all the casserole, soups, all those, they are quite achievable.
Yeah, so interesting. So what do you think we would, if we wanted to have a little bit of Spanish in our pantry, what would we need to get?
Oh, there's a few musts. One is paprika, for sure. Paprika is perhaps in 85% of our recipes. It's one, people sometimes don't know what it is. It's a dry capsicum that suddenly can be later on smoked, or there are different techniques, okay? So paprika, first one. Secondly, Spanish rice. Dani, that people don't know about rice? Like in my cooking classes, I actually take containers of different type of grains of rice. And you should see the faces of my customers, they just blanked out. It's like, what? Rice is rice. That's what everyone says. It's like, no. We got long grain, we got medium grain, we got short grain. And then we talk about the Spanish rice. And you see how their heads there are starting exploding, Did you know that we have 3 different rice production areas in Spain, in East Spain?
I did not know that.
So one in Catalonia, one in Valencia, where the paella is from, and another one in Murcia. Now, those rice production, they got a DOP. And on top of that, they got different type of grinds, depending on what you're going to do. It's funny, all the controversy about paella with chorizo, not chorizo. I don't answer anymore that question. I always say to people, look, let's learn about the Spanish rices. Let's talk about type of rices. Right now, Dani, you and me, we catch up on a weekend. I would like to cook 3 different types of rices for you. One, we call it caldoso, which is a brothy one. Another one is called meloso, which is like a creamy, like a risotto type of thing. And the third one, they are called dried rice, which is all the paellas. People don't know those things, but that's what is embedded in our DNA, and that's what we would like to teach people how to do it.
Yeah, I think it's such a nice way into learning about a culinary culture through such a staple ingredient like rice. It's such a bedrock of so many different cuisines, but it's in a way, I suppose you're introducing a complexity, but it also it allows people to approach it quite simply, just with this one staple ingredient, but appreciating the differences and the different purposes that you might use these different grains for.
Especially nowadays with the cost of living, Dani, it is so important to understand rice. Like for me, as I said, I come from a really humble family, and rice was all the time in a plate. It didn't matter what it was. So yeah, first thing it would be about understanding your type of rice, and then don't be scared. Go for it. Probably you don't get it the first time right. It will come after a couple of times more.
This episode is proudly supported by Montague, handpicked for you.
So the eating experience of our plums is sweet. That's a primary driver. It's got to be sweet, but it's also got to have enough acid, because the mix of acid and sugar is what gives fruit its flavour. And in a plum, it tends to be slightly higher acidity. And then a really nice, full, not dry, but juicy explosion of juice into your mouth as you bite into it. That's nirvana for us in terms of plum.
For more information, go to montague.com.au. Cost of living is such an important issue at the moment in restaurants and also in homes. I mean, how can this I'm not going to say it right, but what you said, cocina de aprovechamiento.
Yeah, that's right. The zero waste.
The zero waste type of cooking, or even just appreciating ingredients in a different way. Like, how can that help home and professional cooks with cost of living pressures?
Oh, incredible. Honestly, that's my base. That's the base that I cook, the one that my mom did, that my grandmother did. And honestly, try to reuse everything. It's as simple as that. For example, I was writing the other day on a magazine, the difference between buy a whole chicken, between buying just a tray of chicken thighs or, any of the parts of the chicken, and probably the cost per kilo, it went to up to $20. So my advice is buy a whole chicken, roast it, serve it to your family, use the bones to make a stock, and keep reusing until you can stretch 1 or 2 or 3 meals with the same ingredient. That's what we grew up with, and that's what the Spanish traditional gastronomy is all about.
And I suppose seasonality is such an important aspect as well.
Massive. It is massive. Actually, now I grow my own veggies. All the tomatoes, they are turning color. You can see how the capsicums, they are developing. Well, this is the time to start making gazpachos. No 2 months ago when the tomatoes not were in season. You know what I mean? So this is the moment that the fruit is telling you, use me. So yes, seasonal is super important.
Tell me about gazpacho. What are the things that we need to know?
I'm going to tell you a story that probably you won't believe it. Okay, so as I said, I went to TAFE. I'm an Australian chef. From a cookbook of 4 years of recipes, there were just 2 recipes that they were Spanish, okay? Well, Dani, 2 of them, they were incorrect. And one of them, it was a gazpacho. So this is a message from my friends from TAFE. Please come to us. We will help you with this, okay? Because imagine that they were telling me that the half of the recipe, it was with cold chicken stock. So there were some veggies blended, you put it with cold chicken stock and you serve it. Now,
that does not sound good.
It first doesn't sound good. Secondly, from WHS, it is incorrect. You cannot serve cold chicken stock to anyone to drink it. You know what I mean? So there you go. You have me as a first-year apprentice there with my heavy accent, just putting my hands up and said to the teacher, "Hi, can I please help you here?" So yeah, he was very nice. And I remember my teacher, he's like, "Well, come and do it." I saw him and he's like, "Well, can you do it again?" Yeah, no worries. He called the whole campus. They came to see me. I was like, "Okay, from now on, cross the recipe and we do it in your way." And that's it. This is what we need. We need to embrace each other, and bridging culture at the end of the day.
So tell us, your gazpacho, like cold chicken stock is wrong, but what is right?
So basically gazpacho, it comes from a gastronomic point of view, it comes under cold soups. Okay. So it's a cold soup from the south of Spain. However, people don't know that depending on the thickness, it can be a cold soup or it can be a drink. For example, for me, it's a vegetarian juice that is delicious to have in the fridge. After 5-6 hours of being on the beach, you know that you are a little bit lightheaded. When you go home, just put one of those ones in a glass and drink it, and it's heaven. Honestly, you feel better. So it can be either a soup or it can be a drink. And what is it? Basically, it's just it's a veggie juice, basically.
And so I guess you need really beautiful ripe tomatoes. And what else would you put in your gazpacho?
Well, you put a capsicum as well. You put a bit of garlic, and basically it's just a blend of veggies. They are all summery. And as I said, imagine that you are in Andalusia. It's above 40 degrees, and what you need is something refreshing. Later on, you can play with that. You can make granitas with that. You can make heaps of things with that.
Yeah, actually, I've been in Andalusia when it was 40 degrees, and I don't think anyone made me a good gazpacho. But it was
really?
I was staying in the wrong place. I was staying in a holiday place that was full of English people, and it just they were all having fish and chips. It wasn't great, but what I did see there was those like acres and acres of polytunnels where they were growing tomatoes and capsicum and all that ingredient that just loves the warmth. But it's such a place where produce comes from, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And olive oil. Have you been in Jaén or the area where there's like fields and fields and fields of olive trees?
No, I haven't seen that.
So it's something that actually seems that you can see from the space. It's massive. Spain is one of the main producers of olive oil, okay? And something that surprised me, Dani, is that when you go into the supermarket here, you just see olive oil, veggie oil, but when you see the olive oil, they don't tell you what type of olives it comes from. And it's like wine. Imagine that you go into one place and instead of telling you that this is a Pinot Noir or Tempranillo, it just says on the label, red wine.
Yeah,
it's
you're right.
Red. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And do you know why? That is called monovarietal olive oils. Do you know why we don't have that in Australia?
Tell me.
Because when the first wave of migration, Greek, Italian, they start planting them, they mix all the olive trees up. So now they don't know what it is. And that's the problem that we have. For us, if you go into a supermarket, you could use olive oil picual for one thing, and arequina for another thing. So depending on the type of olive, one is for frying, one is for salad, and we don't have that in Australia. But this is exactly what we need to change and what we need to talk about.
That's so interesting, and it really, reminds me of the rice conversation, where again it's a staple ingredient, but there's so much variation within it.
So that is the issue, Dani. Like when you analyze the problem. And my question is, how come we stuff it up so much? Like they are basic produce, just not in Spanish cuisine, in Mediterranean cuisines, in Greek and Italian. But why don't we have that step further, that extra layer of information to appreciate more the produce?
So, I mean, what is there to celebrate 5 years down? When you have your celebration, what will you be looking back on and thinking, we've really come so far?
Well, so first of all is how lucky we are to have this networking. As I said before, one of the main problems that we had at the beginning, it was a poor communication between the main players. Today, we are celebrating that chefs, institutions, importers, home cooks, because Eat Spanish now is open to everyone. We are talking about this. We all want to push for this. So what's the consequence of that? We can do really cool events. For example, last December, we did our first international event in Barcelona, supported by RMIT University and the Australian Embassy in Spain. How cool is that?
That's
we
so
open
cool.
a bridge between Australia and Spain. Yeah, that's really cool.
Oh, that's amazing. And so what are the plans for the next 5 years? What's your vision?
So at this stage, my vision. My vision, as I said, is I want to go to the supermarket here in a rural area, and I want to be able to see olive oil, saffron, rice, paprika. In the same corner where there are all the cuisines, I want to see Spanish food there. For me to cook with my neighbors. This is my personal goal, okay? As an association, well, we are keep growing. So now we are preparing a super event where I cannot tell you more about it. Probably Anna will be able to do it. But we are bringing a Michelin star chef to do an event in Sydney very, very soon. All that is about creating more awareness about the Spanish gastronomy. I reckon, honestly, just try to be really humble and try to see people cooking Spanish at home.
Love it, Ruben. Well, I'm definitely happy to jump on the Spanish train with you and keep learning and cooking more Spanish food. And let us know when you can share news about the event in Sydney, and we'll make sure we share it with all the listeners. Oh,
absolutely, we do. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for sharing with us today, and happy birthday. Congratulations on 5 years of Eat Spanish.
Yeah, and congratulations to all the members, past, present, and the ones in the future for their amazing job. People don't know that we are a non-profit. So at the end of the day, this is a project that we do with in free time with a lot of passion.
I love it. Thank you, Ruben.
Bye. Have a good day.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.